Hello and welcome to another episode of Exploring Excellence. I am your host, Manny Wolfe, and today I have with me Nicole Moore, who is the love and relationship coach to driven, successful women who have it all except that relationship with, and I'm very tantalized by this part, a top 1% man. So guys, put your thinking caps on, your listening ears on, and pay attention, because you might not be a top 1% guy, but you're going around thinking you are. So we're going to get into that. But first, Nicole, hello and welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. It's great to speak with you. I want to jump right in. Just give me a second there. There we go. I want to know what a top 1% as a man. I want to know what a top 1% man is.
Yeah. Let's see. If you are that, you probably are. So to me, a lot of people hear top 1% men and they think I'm just talking about income. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the best of the best of the best kind of man available. So to me, that means a man who has got his stuff together, who is driven, who is on purpose, who, whatever his mission is, he's actually going after it. We're not talking about the broken birds or the men who kind of sort of maybe have it together. We're talking about a man who has it together in his mission, in his purpose. He also has a heart that is available to love, open, not wounded. We've all got our stuff, but you know what I'm talking about. A man who can really be there for his partner, a man who has interests outside of the relationship, basically a man who has it going together, where you're looking at that man and you're not going, oh, I wish I could change this about him or that about him. We're not talking about a perfect person, but we're talking about a man that when you meet him, you are not comparing him to your checklist and finding him very lacking. You're going, he's got it all together in all of the areas that I need. Basically the best of the best kind of man available.
Got it. So more of a dream home than a fixer-upper.
Exactly. And way too many women, and probably men too, they are with the fixer-uppers, and it doesn't really make them happy.
So what does that man have to have done? And I know that this, well, I imagine this interview would be more about the women that you coach, but we'll just go where it takes us. I'm curious because I've been on, in my life, literally a decades-long journey of improvement and self-discovery to become perfect like I am now.
Yeah.
No, just kidding. But in all seriousness, tell me a little bit more about how does the man get to that level? Like, what are we trying to get rid of?
You know what I think it is? Okay, this is my honest truth, because I work with a lot of women who are into personal development and they're spiritual, and they think it has to look the same way as that. Like, I'm going to the workshops and I'm reading the personal development books, and they think it has to look like that. I honestly, my opinion is, for a lot of men, it comes through pain or failure. Something happens in their life that makes them stop and realize, I'm misaligned. I'm not doing things in the right way. I want something more. I can speak to my personal experience with my husband, who I really feel is a top 1% man. He got divorced. He had a family member die. Like, there were things that happened that shook him up and made him realize, I'm not living in an alignment. I have to be true to me. And then he became centered. He became focused. He started going after his life in all the ways that he should have been previously. So I think for a lot of men, it comes through pain, struggle, getting over an addiction. Something happens, and then they get locked in. They stop floating around. They stop walking around with their wounding, which does hurt the women that they're in a relationship with, just like it does with women, right, who are wounded. And they start to go within. I think that pain is the thing that motivates men to go within.
Do you think that it's different between men and women? Because I noticed a couple of times you said, I think it's that pain that motivates men to go within. First of all, I'd agree with you completely. From my biased perspective, I'm curious though, do you think that different things motivate women to growth than men?
Yeah, I mean,
Fat.
certainly a lot of women, they
Mhm.
will face pain and then they'll decide to
Of
grow. But I
course.
think for women, it's like they want to get something. At least the women that come my way, they come
Mhm.
my way because they're thinking they want to get that relationship. What I do is I show them, okay, but you got to work on this on the inside.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to get that relationship, let's go for it. But we have to get you aligned. It's not just like a man is some prize that you're going to get magically. Like, if you
Right.
want a great relationship, you have to get aligned. I think women, they start seeking, women are trained actually from birth, I think, to believe that they have to change things about themselves in order to get what they want, which sounds like a bad thing. But if we spin it in the right direction, we can
Yeah.
come to understand, if I don't have the relationship that I want, it's only because of something inside of me. So
Right.
they're seeking, they're trying to get, and in that process, a beautiful thing happens. They become the version of themselves that can actually receive what they want.
Now you're talking my language. So this is fascinating to me because out of the context of relationships, I teach this same idea.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of the Avengers and Marvel Cinematic Universe, and hopefully on a little deeper level than just being a grown-up kid who's seen his comic book heroes come to life.
Yeah.
But I thought that, and hopefully this is universal enough that everybody gets the reference. I thought that the Avengers movie that had Ultron, the self-replicating robot, artificial intelligence robot in it, was a great analogy. What I focus on with people is getting you more success and impact. I mean, that's really, I think at the end of the day, we're all sort of, as coaches, doing the same thing if you
Yeah.
get right down to it. But what I tell people is you have to understand that the version of you are today cannot achieve what you want, but it can build the version of you that can achieve it. And that's why I like your answers so much.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about, now you said that you work with driven, professional, successful women.
Uh-huh.
I'm curious, does finding a great relationship impact their business?
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Absolutely. I mean, I saw it in my own business. I mean, I know I have a love coaching business, but
Yeah.
I mean, the year I met my husband, Mike, my business tripled. And that wasn't, I mean, I was focusing on business and love at the same time, of course, but for me, it had a very stabilizing effect. So I don't know if it's like this for men. I can tell you for women, if they don't have that relationship piece settled and they want it, there's a track running in the back of their mind at all times. It's true. This is what happens for women. They
Sure.
go out and they're out with friends and they're thinking, but is there a guy here? Is there a guy here? It's like, I don't know how to explain it any other way. There's a track, there's a loop, it's happening. Even driven, successful women, if they meet a guy that they like and start obsessing about, that woman cannot concentrate at work. Even if she's at the meeting and she's got her coffee and you think she's concentrating on you, she is not. I promise you. She's concentrating on, is the guy going to call her back? It takes up a lot of time for women, a lot of mental energy. When that box is checked off, and it's not really like a relationship is a box to be checked off, but that's how they feel.
Yeah.
When that box is checked off, they feel settled. They feel like they have that piece handled. A lot of energy gets available, and success, a lot of it is about using your energy and putting it in the right direction. Focusing on your love life not working sucks energy from your business being able to work, or your career being able to work.
So it's a matter then of creating energetic economy of motion, in a sense, right? Like taking a meandering river and turning it into a powerful straight river.
Exactly.
I lost my analogy.
Like, men seem to be able to focus, but women, we have a hard time focusing if the love life piece is not handled.
Yeah. And I think, daring to speak on behalf of men, I think that it really depends on, you said that the top 1% men usually sort of rise through struggle, right? Like, and I really love that. I agree that anyone, I think, we forge ourselves in fire. We really do. And if you don't go through fire, I've never seen anyone who comes out forged, without going through fire. So, but I think that as men, if the fire that we go through is like real, I'm going to get kind of, we'll go into it. We'll get out of the kiddie pool side of the water here. If the primary wound comes from your mother, or in a very small amount of cases, another woman when you're young, but typically the mother, then it's a little bit different. The achievement drive is a little bit different than when the primary wound comes from somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I know that because that was me. That was
Mm-hmm.
very much who I was. I was stuck in, I would call it a vicious cycle, just a loop of repeating the same sort of low grade relationship over and over again, until I realized that I was basically repeating the wound that I got in my primary relationship with my mother. So I think that the main difference is that men are at least socially, if not inherently, programmed to go out and achieve.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I think we achieve with the hopes that it'll attract a woman. or in some cases another man, right?
Yeah.
But and I think that painting with the broadest of brushes, women sort of flip that around a little bit. It sounds like what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of women, I mean, women still struggle today with how successful can I be? Am I not going to be able to find a partner if I'm so successful? It's unfortunately still a conversation that happens. And then the other conversation I see with like new entrepreneurs, I coach a lot of people who are entrepreneurs, coaches. Mm-hmm. And then there's this also weird conversation that's happening nowadays where it's like, if I'm not as successful as I need to be, is a man going to want me? So there's like those two sides of the coin that are not happening for women in business. Am I going to be too successful? Am I not going to be successful enough? And it's still, at the end of the day, am I not good enough for the kind of man that I want?
And so is that where you take both of those questions for them?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I share my own personal experience, you know, when I was dating. Yeah. So I remember the year I met my husband, I had moved to San Diego because I moved for love. It's this whole thing. I had an intuitive feeling. The love of my life was in California. So I packed up my life in New York City. I moved. And I had my thing on the wall, my huge wall-size Post-it of the amount of money that I wanted to make that year and like everything that I was going to do to make it. I remember I went on a date with this guy and he looked at it and he said, I won't say the amount, but he's like, oh, you're going to make this much this year? And I said, well, yeah, if I hit all my goals. And I could literally see him becoming insecure about it. And he called me the next day, but then he never called me back. But what I didn't do was say, well, I'm wrong. I can't find the love that I want. I said, where's my top 1% man who's going to see me as a driven woman and just love that and celebrate the power? So that's what I always say to women who, you know, maybe they're following you because they want to be more successful and they're thinking that they're not going to find that right man. You will find the man who loves your power and your drive. Don't settle for the ones who shut you down. Love it.
Now, I'm curious from your experience and perspective, what's the number one thing we have to address? And I say we, but I guess I'm talking about your driven, successful women. But maybe if it can, you know, spill over into men too. What's the crux of beginning the transformation?
Yeah, you mentioned it. So you said that you repeated the same patterns because of your childhood dynamic. Every single person that has ever come my way, I've literally coached hundreds, taught thousands. I mean, everyone. Yeah. It all has to do with their childhood. So I call it your inner little girl. It could be your inner little boy, whatever. Basically, the picture of love that you developed as a child, unless you heal that and shift that and transform that, you will repeat it. Like love, to me, it's like the great equalizer almost, because it's going to show you what you're really thinking and feeling. You're going to get it reflected on the outside. In love, it doesn't matter what you want. It matters what that inner part of you feels you deserve and what is normal. We will always attract in our love life what that part feels is normal. And so it's great if you had an amazing, loving childhood where you always felt good. Right. Most of us didn't. And so we attract in the same wounds over and over and over again until we heal and shift and transform. And then something great is possible. And that's what I love. It's like you can be born in this dynamic and you can shift it and you can create something entirely different within this lifetime. Like, to me, that's the most exciting part of this work.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree. I often like to talk to people about, or even teach how we tend to carry with us a limited view of what's possible with transformation. right? Most people think of transformation in terms of percentages. And it's so funny, like 10%, 20%, if I could only get 30% better.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want people to know is that you can be so much better. You can transform so profoundly that when you tell people who and how you used to be, they'll call you a liar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe you. And when you think about that version of yourself in the past, you just like, it's like, I remember. I mean, if I were to tell you stories about everything, all the craziness that I did in love, from like breaking bottles over my ex-boyfriend, I couldn't sleep at night if a guy didn't call me back. Like literally, I could not sleep. I couldn't function. I mean, just the worst, the lowest of the low self-esteem. And when I look back at that version now, it literally feels like a different person, you know, and you're so right. That level of transformation is available to each and every one of us if we choose it.
So let's talk about your aha moment. Let's talk about the moment where you said, okay, I finally see another way, or I finally see an opening, or I finally, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where that one mental perspective shift happened that, if I guess correctly, it didn't change everything like that, but it allowed you to start doing the work that changed everything.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, long story short, all you need to know about my childhood is that my parents never said I love you. Like, I literally walked around thinking my parents don't love me. Like, now I know they do, but that was the feeling that I had. So feelings of worthlessness. So I didn't have a boyfriend until senior year of college. And it was like my first love. And then I just lost myself completely. Like, I didn't know who I was without talking to him. I would get out the subway in New York. I would call him. I would walk all the way home. I would wake up in the morning. I would call him. I was so majorly addicted to this person. Then he broke up with me because I was unhappy. I was unhappy with myself at the time. So I would be mean to him sometimes when I got upset. I mean, now I look back, I'm just like, oh my God, this was such a nice man, you know?
Right.
And I said something, he failed to Series 7. Like, he was working at Bank of America. And I remember one time, this is when I was drinking too, and I said something about that. I think that was, women don't say things to men when you're mad. They're going to cut out their self-esteem because they will never forget. So that was like the moment where it started ending the relationship. I know, when those words came out of my mouth, because I kind of cut him off as a man. But then he broke up with me kind of like shortly thereafter because he said he couldn't make me happy. And I remember feeling like I was walking with crutches and they got kicked out. Like, I literally felt like I couldn't function. I couldn't survive. And I realized I'd become so dependent on this person's love because I didn't have any of my own within. That was like the wake up call where I was like, how am I thinking I cannot survive without this person and their love? How lacking must I be within? And I made a decision that I was going to figure this love thing out. I was going to figure this self-love thing out. I was going to feel myself. It was a long, long, long process after that.
Of course.
But the level of dependency for me made me realize something has to change for sure.
How long was the process before you started to feel a sense of traction and progress?
I mean, I started to feel better in my self-esteem right away. But the thing is that there's layers to healing. So I got over that relationship. Then I entered into a relationship with somebody who I thought was my soulmate. This was another love lesson. He ended up, long story short, being an emotionally abusive narcissist who cheated on me multiple times, all of that stuff. I know a lot of women can relate, especially if you're like a light worker, you tend to attract those people.
So can men, by the way. A lot of men can relate to that.
Right? But with that relationship, by the way, I was already a coach at that time when I was in that relationship. So I had to end that relationship. I'd already talked about him to my email list. I felt a lot of shame. But what that relationship made me realize was, it doesn't matter how smart my intellect is or how accomplished I am or whatever. This piece inside of me, this inner little girl, is what's creating the relationship. I attracted in a narcissist who criticized me because I learned as a child that criticism is love equals criticism, right? I learned as a child that love equals conflict, all these things. So when that was so present on the outside, and I was also like, Nicole, you have to get together. Like, I was already coaching people who were married. I'm like, why are my clients married? And I'm in this place, which I think a lot of people who help people could probably relate to that too, you know?
Yeah.
That's when I said, I have to really put a focus on this, on healing. I put myself through my own program. I did all the work that I was coaching everyone else, to do. And then I found my husband, and then it went on from there, So there's layers to the healing. but I started feeling shifts right away after I just focused on self-love.
Gotcha. Tell me the role communication plays.
Yeah. I mean, to me, at the end of the day, a relationship is two people communicating with each other. Like, it's communicating, it's going out and doing things, it's having sex. You know, like, that's a relationship. And so to me, communication is the most important thing. If you can't communicate, you can't really have a relationship. But a lot of people are not communicating. They're using fear-based communication. They're using manipulative communication. They're not saying what they really think and feel. I feel like communication, if you use it in the right way, it can create such intimacy, such openness, such connection. It's a powerful tool. But again, used in the wrong way, especially like women, just know, like, whatever you're saying to a man, he's going to take it 10 times stronger. You think you're saying, why didn't you take out the garbage? He's feeling it like I'm a failure. So just know that, ladies, it's 10 times stronger, whatever you say. So use your communication wisely. I mean, it's super important. Sure.
Absolutely. Now, I've been fascinated by communication for a long, long time, all my life, I think. In fact, initially, when I got into the coaching space, my idea was that I would be a communication coach. Turns out it's a little hard to sell. It's a little nebulous. You know, you got to zero in on it a little deeper than just a communication coach. But I found that, I'm curious what you think of this. I found that in my experience, most people, most of the time, back to the broad brush, the communication is simply a reflection of where that emotional their child is. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think that speaks to what you were talking about manipulative communication. Yeah. I forget what else you said, but do these women who are in other areas successful and driven come in with, like, do you have to teach them that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay. For sure. I call it feminine loving communication. It's really loving communication. Mm-hmm. So what these women are doing is they're not pausing and thinking about what they want to say. They're reacting from that wounded place within. So all their communication is coming that way. And so what I help them realize is, A, the energy matters. So if you say to a man, why didn't you take out the garbage? You're going to get a certain reaction. Men go into defense mode when they feel that you're attacking them, and then they're not able to give you what you want, right? If you say, I'm curious, did something get in the way of you taking out the garbage? It's a different energy. You're not coming at him, and then he's actually going to stop and think and maybe give you a real answer. So most women are doing the first thing. They're triggered, they're saying whatever comes out of their mouth, and they're not stopping to think about the impact of the communication on the other person. And you really have to think about when you're saying words to someone else, even if you're stating a boundary or you're asking for what you want, or you're saying, hey, you did something that hurt me. Is there a loving way to say it where the person can actually receive it? I don't know about men and women, but I know women, if they communicate with a man with anger, attack, he will go into defense mode and you will not like what that man says afterward.
Yeah.
Online.
No, I agree with that. So where does, I guess I have two questions. Where does listening come in? Obviously. Yeah. And how do you, if you do, how do you teach listening? Because there are, I would say, at least 4 different levels of listening, from, what? Like the kind of listening that we do for a kid.
Yeah.
So that if their tone or pitch changes, we're on alert. But other than that, we just tune them out. A lot of us I think you'd probably agree, bring that into our grown-up relationships, all the way down to the kind of listening where you're now so in tune and connected that you can hear what's not being said, because most of us, most of the time, are saying one thing, but we're attempting to say something deeper. Yeah. So really curious your thoughts on that. And then how do you teach that?
It's pause. I mean, it's all, you just have to pause. Like, you just have to pause and think about the other person. So a lot of women, when they listen to a man or even a woman, I have women who want to find a woman. Like, I coach women like that too.
Sure.
We are listening with our lens, and we're interpreting everything through the way we think about it. And so I teach women, stop. If a man said, well, first of all, take men literally most of the time with what they're saying, don't make up all these assumptions, but that's kind of the point. The main thing women need to do, and what I teach them, is receive the communication. Don't blurt something out right away. Think about the intention behind the other person saying it. Don't make up a story around the person. And if you don't understand, ask a question. I think the problem is people run with their assumption of what the other person is saying or doing, and they don't ask a question. I think a follow-up question, I'm curious, I thought you meant this, did you mean that, is going to go a long way. And it's actually going to show you really are listening, trying to hear the other person. I think a lot of people, they listen, but they're not even seeing the other person, if that makes sense. They're just running on their own track.
Yeah.
Their own mind.
I would say that's probably like level 2 listening.
Mm-hmm.
You're paying attention, you're tuned in, you could repeat back what was said if you had to, but it's not really making an impact. It's not going through the first defenses, so to speak.
Yeah.
Now, I like how simple your approach to a very subtle and sophisticated piece of learning is with listening. And I can see how just having that checklist of, okay, stop, process.
Yeah.
I think that's very good. I also, as a man, appreciate that you're teaching, take us literally most of the time, because most of the time we are. Now, my question for you, in an effort to help these top 1%, let me rephrase that. In an effort to help my top 5% men become a top 1% man, what can we do differently?
Okay. So every single woman, when I ask her what she wants in a man, will say a lot of things. What she'll always say is to feel safe. Like women need, if you want a woman to give you everything, you need to make her feel safe. That is the bottom line. And part of their feeling of unsafety is not on you. They're feeling unsafe because of things that happened in the past. So you're not responsible for all of it. But women want to feel that you are in integrity with your word, that you're going to do what you say you're going to do. They can trust your growth in the future. Like, they don't actually even want to just see you now. They want to know that in the future, if they're with you, it's going to be a good picture in the future. You know what I mean? So focus on, how can I make this woman feel safe and secure? Every single woman I've ever talked to wants that feeling, for sure.
I think that that's something that most men don't know. Honestly, I think that we've got the sort of less evolved men who think that a woman wants money and status from a man, the sort of cliche. And then we've got the more sort of getting it together guys, the ones that are like, okay, so that's not really working. And I think that we feel like they want communication, but we don't understand necessarily the difference between the way we communicate and the way women stereotypically communicate.
Yeah.
As a sidebar there, I know it's been very, very helpful for my relationship to allow my wife to just speak, just to sort of vent and not fix it all the time. Again, literal, right? Problem, I fix. Problem, me fix. So I don't think that we are sort of, I'm going to say, culturally aware. I think this is very, very important. That what they want is to feel safe. And so you're saying, if I understand correctly, that feeling safe, or you're not saying that feeling safe is necessarily about having the big brawny alpha.
No, it's about keeping your word. It's about them knowing that you are solid. You are there for them. At the end of the day, whether it's right or wrong, women, I told this to my husband when I was pregnant, but it was because I was pregnant. I was like, I just need you to be solid all of the time. Because, when you're pregnant, it's like a whole different kind of feeling, I do give him leeway. I'm not perfectionist, but it's kind of true. You know what I mean? We want you to be there when we want you to be there. We want you to keep your word. We want you to be a safe emotional space for us. If a woman feels safe, she will open in every single way, including sexually.
Yeah.
Bottom line.
And I wanted to mention that in passing too, because I think it's really important. Sort of, and we're talking a lot, I guess what we're doing here, and I like this, by the way, is we're getting into some stereotypes and dispelling them. I really think that's good. One of the stereotypes is all men want sex all the time, right?
I hate that. That one bothers me so much.
So then do you think that what we really want is to feel like you're completely giving yourself to us? It's more of an emotional thing, right?
Yeah. Women, yeah. I hate this idea that men are just these sex crazed animals, or women just, really, this is my perspective. I believe like wholeheartedly that enlightenment can be found in the body of a woman. I think the men who just want sex, they're not consciously realizing they're seeking enlightenment. They're seeking growth. They're seeking something higher. They might be going for the sex, but it's not about that. They're trying to get something,
because they don't know the other dimensions, right? They're pulled toward, they're pulled in pursuit of that thing, but they don't have language awareness or comprehension of it. Yeah. And I mean, I can put myself back 20 years and go, that was 100% me. Mm-hmm. I was absolutely a womanizer, 100%. I was, and actually probably best to go back 25 years. 23 years ago, I got sober. And the first thing I did, I mean, literally from day one of sobriety, was I was like, I have to figure out why the way I phrased it then was why I treat women this way. But what I meant was, had I had the language, why me and women interact this way. Mm-hmm. And it took a long time to parse it out. But one of the things I realized was I'm desperate. I'm starved for acceptance and to be let in, to be loved. And the way that I have been able to get that since I was very, very young is conquest, sexual conquest. And I think many men that's sort of we don't get past that level, but that's not actually the thing we're going for.
No.
Yeah, I like that you said that. So here's what I really like, taking everything so far on balance. Everything that you're talking about is stuff that we should be doing for ourselves anyway. So it's really not even about how to get a 1% man. It's how to become the woman that a 1% man couldn't possibly say no to.
Exactly.
Nicely done.
Exactly.
Nicely done. Yeah.
It's all about the inner journey at the end of the day. When you get to that place, you honestly, you like who you are so much that you feel like, of course, this kind of person would want me, and then it's like, it's just obvious that they would be in your life, and it's really easy to bring that kind of person in, I wouldn't trade the inner journey. Before I met my husband, Mike, I had done so much work that I felt like I really value who I am in relationship. I know what I bring to the table. I know what a man's going to get as a result of being with me. So I wasn't like, please pick me, pick me. You know what I mean? Like, I was more like, you are very lucky if you get to be with me kind of energy. But just because of the inner stuff, not the outer stuff or any of that. You know what I mean?
I totally know what you mean. Yeah. I feel like I've been on both sides of that equation, where it was urgent and desperate and, conquest driven and status driven, to all the way over to the other side, where like now I just don't have any of those pieces in me anymore. Mm-hmm. So, no, I really like it. Now, let's talk about, we can kind of end here. Talk about your favorite success stories. Tell me some of the things you've seen that have just made you so glad you're doing this work.
I have a lot of success stories. So one of my favorite is, I like this because it's dispelling a myth. So somebody emailed me, she wasn't even a client yet. She's like, Nicole, here's this article that was written on how Black women are the least likely to get married ever. And here's why. And she sent me the article saying, this is why I can't find love. And that's what all women who come my way, they have their story. And this is the reason why. But this was like an article in print, so it felt more real. And I just said, okay, I'm not even going to argue on you with that, because this is like something you feel is real and it's part of your experience. But do you want to be that, or do you want to be the exception? And I got her to understand she could be the exception, even if this piece is saying, it's horrible, right? Like, why would you put that out there? But anyway, long story short, now she's married. She's a baby on the way. And she's an example. She's an example that I use for other women to show what's possible. And I love those kinds of stories. I have another client who, one unavailable man after the other. Of course, her father left for 7 years, working with coaches, trying to find it. It wasn't until we healed an inner little girl piece. She also was a single mom, and she had a story that she thought her kid would be a liability, which I'm a mom, and it hurts me to think that she would think that, but she thought that guys weren't going to want her because of her child. So we did a lot of work on her inner little girl. Anyway, long story short, she's now with an incredible guy who's just amazing with her daughter. And like, those stories make me so happy. It's not just about the woman finding love. It's about family finding love at the end of the day. And that's what I live for. Those success stories, those turnarounds, doesn't matter what you think your limit is or has been, you still deserve love and you can still find it.
I love it. I really love it. I think that's a perfect place to end. Yeah. I think we've gone through some wonderful material, gone deep in some meaningful places, and that's just the period at the end of the sentence.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I now know a little bit more about you, and I can honestly say I love your work. I'm just really glad we got a chance to talk today.
Thank you.
My pleasure.